Good morning and welcome to TEDxDHS 2021. I'm Mrs. True. Mrs. Souza and I would like to tell you just how happy we are to have you here with us today. So the TEDx Club is thrilled to present to you this exciting event here at Dartmouth High School. This is an independently organized event. This year it will be broadcast via live stream, as you can see, by DHS TV Media Productions. This change is obviously a major change from our previous format of having a live audience. Our live streamed event, along with the participants wearing masks, are all trying to meet the COVID-19 protocol guidelines. Our theme this year is Sociology, moving forward one step at a time. Students from Cohort A and Cohort B will be presenting various topics that are engaging and stem from their personal passions. These students have volunteered their time to the group and diligently prepared presentations to enlighten you on a variety of topics. You may be thinking, when you hear the word TED, who's this TED guy? Well, I'm here to tell you that TED is an acronym for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. The TED organization has covered many topics with ideas worth spreading in various fields of study. You will see the same diversity in the topics being presented here today and then again tomorrow. Okay, and let's get the show on the road. Our first presenters are our only presenters that are partners. Our first is Grace George. This is Grace George's senior year here at Dartmouth High School. Grace is a member of the Multicultural Club and has been a co-founder of the Science Club and wants to study biology upon graduation. Grace also enjoys reading a good romance novel and has a bit of an obsession with the Bachelor franchise series. Grace's partner is Sarah Hartman. Sarah is also a senior here at Dartmouth High School. Sarah is very involved in extracurricular activities. She is the other co-founder of the Science Club, is president of the Key Club, is president of the Student Council, and is captain of the math team. Additionally, Sarah is troop president of her Girl Scouts troop and plays the violin. She loves to bake and play with her dog. Sarah and Grace chose their topic because both believe that learning is more important than grades and that everything that can be learned can't be measured by a grade. They want people to know that learning is fun. Please welcome Grace George and Sarah Hartman as they present what lies within the letter.
What did you learn in the first 5 years of your life?
I know you're thinking, probably not a lot. I was just a baby who was sitting at home and playing, but all those things were very influential in your learning. One of my favorite things when I was little was building sandcastles. And I didn't realize at the time that building those sandcastles was the basis of learning about engineering and construction. One of my favorite days in kindergarten was when the firefighters came to visit and told us about fire safety. Now I know to stop, drop, and roll, and to use a pillowcase in case I need someone to get me, which can save me from dying. Personally, one of my favorite memories from a kid was playing with the medical kits. I used to love those little plastic stethoscopes that I used on my family members, and that was the first time I learned what a heartbeat was.
Were you graded on all these things that you learned as a toddler? No, you were entirely self-motivated. And did you learn? Certainly.
So if you were able to learn when you were a kid without grades, why do you have grades now? Well, three of the main purposes of grades are evaluation, communication, and motivation. So grades help teachers, parents, higher learning, and even yourself see how you're doing. Teachers use it to see if they need to reinforce a certain topic, and colleges use it to see if you're a good fit for them academically. And also, motivation. Grades extrinsically motivate students to work hard because they will want to focus on studying, so in order to get the grade they want. Now I'll get into some cons of grades. One of the main cons of grades is that they encourage the learn, test, forget, repeat method. Basically, you learn a unit, you test on it, then you forget it. And I know I'm guilty of this because It's hard to try to remember everything when you have more to do. Grades are also very impersonal sometimes. Alfred Cohn, author and lecturer about education, interviewed teachers and students about grades. And in this interview, one student named Claire said that once the first time they were given a grading rubric, they felt that education stopped being for them and became about the grade. Grades can also disencourage kids from challenging themselves. In the same article by Alfie Cohn, a teacher named Mr. Robbins said that he noticed that once his students started picking easier topics on a project just to get the easier grade, so even though they might learn more from a more challenging topic, they go with the easier one just to get the grade. And grades are also very inconsistent. Teachers might grade differently, so even if students have the same master level content, they might get different grades due to different teachers. And also methods like curving where a certain amount of students have to get an A, certain amount of students have to get a B, can really not make grades about what you know, but what you know compared to what someone else knows. And this picture is comparing a 10-point scale to a 7-point scale. So even if two students get the same number grade, it might be reflected differently in their report card because due to what their school uses for lettering. Grades can also have a bad physical and mental effects. So there's this organization called Challenge Success. It's a nonprofit and it works with schools. And they did a study in 5 California high schools. And in this study, they found out that 79% of students said that grades are a main cause of stress. And 83% of high schoolers have stress-related health issues. And another big issue that comes from stress is sleep deprivation. One 9th grader said, when asked what they would like their parents to know, said that, "I'm not staying up late because I want to. I know the consequences. But my grades are more important. I'm not trying to make you upset. All I want to do is sleep." So as students, we know that sleep and having a good mental health are important, but sometimes we let our focus on grades get the best of us.
Grades also don't necessarily measure learning the way that everyone learns best. Everyone learns differently. According to the American Test Anxiety Association, about 35% of students suffer from moderate to high levels of test anxiety. So, for example, a student can understand the material perfectly well, but then not do well on a test due to test anxiety. So grades don't necessarily reflect learning differences. In addition, grades don't even measure the qualities that are needed to succeed. For example, the ability to be flexible, the ability to manage your time, collaborate with others, and communicate. These are all of the qualities that employers look for according to an IBM survey. And these qualities can't really be measured by grades. So, who do grades impact? They don't just impact you as a student. They are a part of our entire society. Our grades impact the way our teachers teach, our parents, our schools, our MCAS scores impact the Department of Education, and they impact the statistics that our country uses. So our society is kind of based off of grades. So we can't really get rid of them. So what can you do as a student right now?
Our solution is to focus on learning first. So by that we mean forget the grades for a second, not forever, just for a second. So now when you get that project, try to choose a harder topic or assignment because you might learn more from it. And also our school just instated this new retake policy, which we're very lucky to have. So when you get your first test back, try to look at your mistakes and analyze them before going and getting the retake, because that might help you do better.
By not focusing on grades, that might even lead to a better grade. For example, an experiment that was published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that students, 5th grade students who were told that they weren't going to be graded when they read an article were able to learn more from reading that passage. They were able to learn for longer, they had a better understanding, and even more, they had a greater interest and they felt less pressured. So why focus on grades when you don't focus on grades, you'll get the same grade and you'll be happier. So I know you may be thinking, what should I do? Should I focus on learning if I may never use a class in the future? Well, you probably will use that class. Remember that survey that said that employers looked at the qualities such as adaptability, time management, and teamwork? These are all qualities that you can develop in any class you take. And adaptability is so important that you're able to understand many different topics and adapt to new situations. In addition, 30% of college students change their major at least once, and the average person works 12.3 different jobs in their lifetime. So even if you don't think you're going to use something, you probably will use what you learn at some point in your 12 different jobs. You never know when it'll be useful to know the structure and function of a mitochondria.
What we want to leave you with is to try to learn more outside the classroom like you did and be not graded like you did when you were little. So there are many ways to do this. You can apply for internships in a certain business or place of work you like. You can join a club. You can join the science club. Shameless self-promo, I know. But if you want to do your own independent research, like you do that in the science club. And also read a book. Many professors, researchers, and experts publish books on what they know. And I'm sure you can find a book on something you like, I guarantee you. And finally, do a TED Talk. This has been a very enriching experience. I love being able to work with Sarah. And my favorite part is being able to share what I believe with all of you. So please sign up for one next year.
According to educator Edgar Dale, these kinds of active experiences like doing a TED Talk or conducting your own research not only lead to more learning, but also allow you to use what you learn in more interesting ways.
By focusing on learning first, because learning is more important than what lies within the letter, you can help the world move forward.
One step at a time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Grace and Sarah. That was wonderful. Our second presenter is Lavender Bork. Lavender is a senior here at Dartmouth High School who enjoys learning about many varied topics. While at DHS, Lavender has been a member of both the Unified Bowling and Unified Basketball teams. She plans to attend the Community College of Rhode Island this coming fall and major in accounting. The reason she chose her topic is because she found learning a foreign language particularly challenging and empathizes with those who are learning a new language. Please welcome Lavender Bork as she presents ESLs, ELLs, and FELs. What is the meaning of an acronym?
$73,300,300 people. Now, that is a huge number. To put that into perspective, that is 1/5 of the United States population, or about 20%. That is the number of people in the United States who do not speak English. Now, English is the predominant language of the United States, with 78.1% people speaking it. However, the reason that the United States does not claim an official language is because if they were, all our documents in official forms would be in English only. So what does that mean? That means that we wouldn't have any variability. We wouldn't have other languages available in other forms. So the United States is very special in this sense because they offer many opportunities for people who do not predominantly speak English to learn English or have opportunities to gain a basic understanding. In fact, we offer some of those programs here. So what is an ELL? ESL, or a FEL. Now, I know you're probably wondering, what are these random acronyms? These acronyms define a small percentage of students at Dartmouth High School. Now, it's not as much as the surrounding districts, however, but it does define a small percentage. An English language learner, or an ELL, is someone whose first language is not English. So that means that they come to school and they learn English through many different techniques. An ESL is what we call the department, well, New Bedford calls the department, and the surrounding district called the department, that teaches English. It's the English as a secondary language department. However, here we call it the ELE, which is English Language Education. A FEL will be described later in the TED Talk. So I'm about to tell you how ELLs are categorized and how they are taught. Let's talk about WIDA. WIDA is the world-class instructional design assessments. Now that is a lot to remember, and it's a lot of words. They have a test called Access for children K through 12 to learn English. Access gives a score and places them into 6 different levels of English learning. So Access tests an ELL's learners basic understanding or English proficiency. And we are one of the 40 states in the United States who offers WIDA. There are 10 states who don't. Massachusetts is one, and here at Dartmouth High School, we actually have it. I'm pretty sure you've seen the posters all over classrooms. I've never taken the time to read one because it's a lot of words, but if you were to take the time to read one, you'd learn a lot from it. There are 6 levels of WIDA language proficiency. Level 1 being entering, 2 beginning, 3 developing, 4 expanding, 5 bridging, and 6 reaching. So someone who is a level 1 may just be starting out with English. For instance, they may just be learning the alphabet or such. Level 2 may be that they can match words with pictures. However, I will be referencing the 2007 English language proficiency standards from WIDA. The standards have example topics to follow, and the standards fall under an umbrella of 5 categories. ELL students at a level 1, like I said, usually are learning the alphabet. Level 3 could be described as like having a sentence starter and filling in the verbs. Level 4 and 5 are usually when they're able to start working on their own. Their English comprehension is developed more than it was at level 1 or 2 or 3. And reaching is when an ELL is moved into a FEL category, which will be explained later. Students are also put into 4 subcategories: writing, listening, reading, and speaking. These categories help classroom teachers understand how the ELL learner understands the subject that they are learning. Now you're probably wondering, what is the FEL? Once a student reaches a level 6 on the WIDA scale, and score the requirements on the access test, they are known as a FEL, a former English learner. These students can form sentences, do well with comprehension, and can write essays with minimal grammatical error. At the high school, teachers are sent forms twice a year to assess how a FEL learner is doing with learning English and how they're doing in the subject that they are in. In order for an ELL to be exited from a program, they must get an overall score of 4.2 or higher on the access test, and a score of 3.9 or higher on the literary portion of the test. The school also looks at other things like MCAS, report cards, or progress reports to consider moving an ELL to a FEL. Classroom environments differ from country to country. I bet you didn't know that in Spain, around 1 or 2 p.m., they usually take a 30-minute lunch break. Sometimes it can be up to an hour for a nap and also to get lunch, because it is considered sacred in Spain. Meanwhile, in the United States, our classroom environments differ. We have different social instructions. We have different things. And I bet if you were to go If you were to go to a different country, you wouldn't know the etiquette of that country's classroom or anything. Now, English is one of the hardest languages to learn, if not the hardest. English is often the hardest class for the ELLs, the reason being that there are a lot of unspoken rules for English. For instance, the way we word the great big dog. We use rules of adjectives, rules of word placement, and honestly, it can be confusing, especially if you didn't learn it from a young age. In fact, most of us still struggle with there, and there. Imagine having to learn the same word spelt 3 different ways. That's pretty hard. However, if an ELL has a strong understanding of their first language, they are more likely to understand English better. But overall, learning a whole new language from the start isn't easy in any situation. I'm pretty sure at the high school we have Spanish, Portuguese, and Mandarin. We have a lot of issues when we first start out with Spanish and Portuguese in 8th grade. Imagine learning English. Now, math already is its own language. Math has a lot of complex terms that most English native speakers struggle to learn. Like, I really struggled with trigonometry. Now imagine sitting there in that same lesson, having to translate most words to a different language, trying to keep up with the teacher because you don't understand what's going on. That's pretty hard. But there is a connection with the numbers that are used in many foreign languages. So there was a research project done by Arwa A. Al-Shiri for his master thesis about the correlation of learning chemistry while being unable to speak secondary English. Most of the ELLs in the research project could not draw a correlation and distinguish the point of the lecture and the point of the experiments due to the complex nature of the information being presented. When presented with certain things like a beaker, a thermometer, they couldn't identify it. Instead, they had trouble identifying it in English. Most of them said that it was what it was in their first language. And it's very interesting because science is really hard. And it shows how much we take for granted because we thankfully have a basic understanding of English, and we are taught from a young age about English. Meanwhile, someone who comes here has a lot of issues learning it, and it's a very hard language to learn. The language of social studies tends to be a tad bit easier in some instances due to the fact that, well, someone in France might learn French history from a young age as we learn American history in elementary school. They will have a basic understanding of world history. Meanwhile, when they come here, they won't have the fundamentals for American history. So world history tends to be the easiest class for an ELL to understand, or at least a tad bit easier than some of the other social studies classes. Now, here is an interesting thing. Let's look at it at a local perspective. In the whole district, there are 55 ELLs and 64 FELs. To put that into perspective, at the high school, there are 1 out of 200 students are an ELL, and 1 out of 120 students are a FEL. Dartmouth does not have a high number of ELLs or FELs compared to some of the surrounding districts. Dartmouth is actually considered a low incidence district, which means the number of ELLs are below 100 students. The plan that Dartmouth puts into motion at the elementary level is the pull-out motion of ELE instruction. Now I'm going to remind you that ELE stands for English Language Education. An ELE certified teacher pulls the ELLs out of class for 30 to 45 minutes a day in order to give complex instruction to them, or they push into the classroom if needed, depending on the schedule needs and depending on the time requirements, and they help the student out with complex instruction, as I stated before. But it also depends on the level and needs of the students. However, in New Bedford, they use the same method, but the situation is a bit different. At Dartmouth, it is called At Dartmouth, as I said, it is called English Language Education instead of ESL. Ms. Duarte, the head of the ELE department, was very helpful when providing this information about ELLs in the district. Miss RR is a third grade general education teacher at Alfred J. Gomes School in New Bedford. She has taught there for as many years as I've been alive, so about 17, and has taught both first and third grade. She is bilingual and speaks both Spanish and English. When speaking to her, she told me that she is currently teaching 29 students. Out of those 29, 23 of them were bilingual. She has taught many children. Some of them did not speak any English, though, and were level 1s on the WIDA scale. For instance, she said the most students that she had taught that was a level 1 on the WIDA scale was 7 in 1 year. She praised the ESL department at Alfred J. Gomes Elementary School, and she praised the teachers that she works with. When I asked her about how she teaches her students who do not speak any English and are considered a level 1, she gave an example of sequencing. So, the native English speakers, they are given a paragraph in which they must put the sentences in order to write a story. Well, the level 3s are given a little more structured, like for instance, they may just have to fill in the verbs. Well, level 1s would be given pictures and they'd have to put it in order. She said that the ESL department has the same method that we use at Dartmouth High School, the pull-out method. They push into classroom to help with instructions or pull the kids out of class to give more structured, intensive instruction. I actually was once a student at Alfred J. Gomes Elementary School. And however, I did not notice this because I was very young at the time. But when I got to Hayden McFadden, I noticed that I was in a class with a lot of children who were bilingual and spoke Spanish. Now, while talking to Ms. RR, she mentioned the Dual Language Immersion program, which is a program in which, let's say a class of 20 to 30 kids are put together. And there's one teacher speaking in English, teaching the lesson in English, while the other is speaking in Spanish and teaching the lesson in Spanish, so that basically the children who are learning English while also learning Spanish at the same, while the English-speaking children are also learning Spanish at the same time, so it's a little bit of teaching them Spanish, and so it's kind of like teaching a foreign language and also like helping them. So it started off in 2019 with kindergarten, and every year they add on a grade. 2020 was first grade, 2021 was second grade, so that the children who started off in the dual language immersion program in kindergarten will graduate elementary school in that program. It follows them. Now, the reason that Alfred J. Gomes has it and Dartmouth does not is because A.J. Gomes is one of the has the highest concentration of ELL learners in the district in New Bedford. Dartmouth, however, like I mentioned, is a low incidence school and district. So we don't meet the requirements for the ELL learners and the dual language immersion program because you need at least 20 kids who speak the same language. And at Dartmouth, we do not have that because our numbers are below 100 kids. In conclusion, the United States is a melting pot of different cultures and languages. That is the key factor in this. The United States provides so many opportunities for non-English speakers and their children, but the issue at the end of the day is that there are not enough ESL teachers who can provide educations for these children, so much so that the United States has started searching abroad. ESL teachers are the teachers that are unheard of. They do so much behind the scenes, and you never hear about the impact that they have. So if you know an ESL teacher, thank them today. If you know an ELL or FEL, offer them help with their essays. Tell them you'll look over their grammatical errors, because most of us are lucky enough to have English as a native language. And this informing you about English language learners and how they are educated is how I'm moving forward one step at a time.
Thank Thank you, Lavender. That was really great. All right, our next and final presenter for this particular period is Jaffa Heriadano. Jaffa is a senior here at DHS and plans to study aerospace engineering upon her graduation. Jaffa is a member of the DHS tennis team and enjoys playing the sport very much. She chose her topic because she loves fashion, shopping, and clothing way too much, as Jaffa put it. I can empathize. She has found that most people don't understand how important the fashion industry is to the economy as a whole and how it impacts both our environment and our society as well. Please join me in welcoming Jaffa Heriadano as she presents The Price We Pay, a look into the global fashion industry.
So I'm going to ask you all to take one look at yourself and then a look at someone around you and think of one thing that you all have in common. Well, from my point of view, it seems that everyone in this room is wearing clothing, thankfully. The world of clothing, it's something that we don't think about all the time, but it's always there and it's always changing. And in trying to keep up with the rush of our own lives, we fail to notice how every time we walk into a store, there's about 100 different new products. Well, why is that there? Why do we have so much stuff? Well, it wasn't always like this. You see, in the past, having a closet full of clothes to choose from and a different outfit for every day of the week was practically unheard of, and this was because clothing was super, super expensive to make. The process of taking something raw like cotton and then turning it into something wearable like a shirt took a lot of time and energy, and that also meant that it took a lot of money. And frankly, a lot of money was just something that people didn't have. So this meant that fashion was something only for the rich. That is, until the 1950s. So 1950s America reveled in a time of post-war prosperity amongst other issues. However, people wanted to treat themselves to commodities such as clothing because they could finally afford it. And this is why there are department stores like Sears that start showing up everywhere because people could finally buy clothes. Now, this happened to coincide with the invention of synthetic fabrics, which are man-made textiles that are infinitely cheaper to produce than the raw stuff like cotton or silk. Now, these technological advancements paired with the stable economy of the time are what allowed normal people like you and me to buy lots and lots of clothes, and that's exactly what they did. Fast forward a few years later, and now we have a whole new market. As of now, fashion is more popular than ever. Clothing is not something that we just wear on our backs. It's no longer just a necessity. It's a creative outlet, an art form, and an industry, all thanks to a new revolutionary business model known as fast fashion. Cheap clothing being rapidly mass-produced by large retailers to keep up with the latest trends. So up until now, fast fashion seems kind of perfect. Finally, all people are able to wear what they want, buy what they want. But I think at this point in our lives, we all know that some things are too good to be true. So then what is the problem with fast fashion? If we are paying so little for clothing, then what is the true cost? In 2013, the Rana Plaza clothing factory in Bangladesh collapsed, killing 1,134 of its workers. The factories were run by and manufactured clothing for major fast fashion brands, including Adidas, American Eagle, and H&M. Now, all of these buildings were not made to manufacture clothing. They were actually built on old residential areas that couldn't handle the weight of the production process. So we have a couple of engineers come into the building to inspect its structure, and they see how poorly it was run, and they say, this is a terrible idea. If people work here, they're going to die. So they go to the managers of these factories and explain to them that if they want to run production, you're going to need to spend more money to support its structure. However, all of their concerns were basically ignored. Not a single one of the 1,134 workers at the plaza were aware of the fact that the very floor beneath their feet could crumble at any second. And to add insult to this injury, there were no safety precautions taken to make sure that people could get to safety if disaster were to strike, and obviously it did strike. There were no fire extinguishers, no fire alarms, not enough exits for people to escape. Now, this paired with the structural shortcomings of the building are what led to one of the deadliest structural failure accidents in modern human history. However, this is not the only one. Rana Plaza, 1,134 dead. Dhaka Clothing Factory, 117 dead. Karachi Fire Factory, 300 dead. And Lahore Shoe Fire Factory, 30 dead. What I just named are just a few examples of clothing factory tragedies, all of which run by fast fashion companies, all of which happening in the last decade, yet most importantly, every single one of these was preventable if worker safety was taken over priority than streamlining costs. Because the truth is, fast fashion does have a cost. It is paid for in the atrocious environments we put workers through, the havoc it wreaks on our environment, our planet, and the fact that it has masqueraded itself to allow us as a society to let it continue. So I think we all realize by now, or speaking of the environment, an article published by the New York Times credits the fast fashion industry for releasing 1.2 billion tons of CO2 into the atmosphere. Now, this is more than all emissions from any international flight or shipping combined. And to add on to that, the burning of these fossil fuels stems from incinerating 2.5 billion tons of clothing. That's a billion tons to free up landfill space, since these synthetic materials will never biodegrade naturally. So I think at this point, we know that fast fashion is bad. And obviously, no one wants to support killing the environment. No one wants to hurt people. So you're thinking, maybe what brands can I avoid buying from if I don't want to support this? Well, this is where things get a little bit difficult, but I'll try to help you out as much as I can. So on screen, I have a few brands that you can start to avoid to not support fast fashion. And there's also these, and these, and these. And it just keeps going and going and going. Now, you might be thinking, with so much of the market being saturated by brands who are committing these atrocities, is there anything that we can do to not buy and have a guilty conscience? Well, the truth is, basically any clothing brand that isn't making clothes by their hand in their kitchen table has done something that's ethically questionable. But obviously, if something is broken, there should be attempts made to fix it. And the world of fashion is very, very broken. So what are we doing as of now to try and solve what seems like an unsolvable problem? The answer seems almost intuitive. I present to you slow fashion, defined by Oxford International as clothing produced using high-quality resources in an ethical environment. Now, at the 1987 General Assembly, the UN formally defined sustainability as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations, which is us, to meet their own needs. Today, slow fashion has evolved into something that has a lot more structure. So in 2015, which wasn't that long ago, the UN established 17 Sustainable Development Goals, a coalition of 17 global goals designed to be, I quote, a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all of us. Among them is goal number 12, ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. This includes making the distinction between any fast fashion companies and slow fashion companies and trying to get as many of the latter in the industry as possible. Now, I know that sounds like a lot of words and seems really confusing, but thankfully, slow fashion can be divided into 4 very easy principles. The first of which we have transparency. So this means that major companies are being honest to us, the public, about their production process. They're disclosing to us exactly what they're paying their workers, how they're treating them, and how they're making their clothing. So the more that someone knows about how a brand makes their clothing, the more accountable that brand is going to be held and make sure they do things the right way. And with this accountability will come change. Now, from transparency, we can ensure that brands are participating in what's called the ethical production of clothing, our second pillar of slow fashion. Ethical production means clothes are made in a way that is humane. Workers are being paid livable wages, and factories are designed with regulated ventilation systems, fire extinguishers, and enough exits to make sure that events like Rana Plaza never have to happen again because they don't have to happen again. And of course, we can't talk about sustainable clothing without talking about helping the environment, which is why our third pillar is making sure the production process prioritizes environmental health. Now, slow fashion requires that clothes are made using materials and processes that won't permanently damage the earth that we love so much. You might already be seeing instances of this in your own clothing. So if you check the back of a tag and something says 100% organic cotton, that's actually a really good sign because it means that shirt can be recycled and it probably was made with way less water than that of fast fashion clothing. And finally, we have mindfulness. Now, this might be one of the most difficult steps to complete because it involves reversing decades of thinking of clothing as something that is merely disposable. However, at the same time, it is the easiest to start to work on, and that's because it starts with you guys. So to be mindful means to educate yourself on fast fashion, which is what you've been doing, and to understand the benefits that we have by moving towards a more sustainable clothing world. It's to understand the value of good quality clothing and to make this the standard. So, slow fashion seems like such a streamlined solution, something so easy that we can implement. But if it's so easy, then why is fast fashion still an issue? Well, we have to remember why fast fashion why it became popular in the first place, and that's because it was really cheap and everyone could afford it. And honestly, this is not something I can say the same about for slow fashion. So on screen right now, I have a couple of examples from some products for what's known as one of the largest sustainable clothing brands as of now, Reformation. And that cardigan and tank top on your left costs $228. Now, as Ms. True stated before, I love clothing, but I do not love it enough to spend $228 on a shirt that's about the size of my hand. And frankly, I don't think any of you guys are willing to do that either. But the important thing is that there are plenty of people who cannot afford to do that. And now this brings up a dilemma of only the people who can afford it being able to dress sustainably, and the rest of us have to choose between two bad options. Either we continue, quote unquote, killing the planet by buying from fast fashion companies, or we just stop buying clothing, and that's not really an option. Thankfully, as slow fashion continues to grow, brands have realized there needs to be a balance between high-quality clothes and what is affordable. So what I have on screen right now are what are deemed as some of the most affordable slow fashion brands. Now, anything up here will run you from something between like $25 to $30. Now, obviously, this isn't as cheap as buying a $5 shirt from Forever 21. That's the point. You don't want a $5 shirt from Forever 21. Because if something like that only costs $5, then the chances of it being made ethically are extremely low. Now, there are also other options too. If you don't want to buy something that is brand new, you can do what's called thrifting or buying secondhand, second-loved clothing. So I'm sure all of you guys are familiar with stores such as Goodwill or Salvation Army, and places like these are gold mines for buying high-quality vintage clothing for prices that are even cheaper than those of fast fashion companies. And obviously, right now, it's going to be a little bit hard to go out and go thrifting yourself. So you can go online to stores like ThredUp and Depop and Poshmark, which are user-run marketplaces in which people like you and me are selling their own clothes. And because it's people like you and me selling their clothes, the chances of you finding something that you like gone up astronomically. Now, it's good to hear that even brands who are considered the most worst offenders in fast fashion are starting to do things that will help the environment. So for example, we have H&M who released something called the Conscious Collection, a part of their brand that only sells sustainable clothing. Now, does this make up for all the things in the past? Is H&M an angel? Are they perfect? Well, obviously not, but that's the thing. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to try, because even making the tiniest bit of effort is helping push towards the future. And that's why I want to leave you with this. The world of clothing. It's always there, we don't notice it, but it's always changing. Our world is always changing, even if we don't realize. And in a world where things are always changing, it would be nice to have something even as small like a shirt to just last a little bit. And that's how we can move forward one step at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaffa. And this concludes our period 1 presentations. Teachers, we would ask that you hopefully spend some time debriefing with your students, and we'll see you again, period 2. Thank you.
welcome to our 6th TEDxDHS event. Ms. Drew and I are thrilled to present to you this exciting event here at Dartmouth High School. This is an independent, organized event. This year, it will be broadcast via live stream by DHS TV Media Productions. This is a change from our previous format of having a live audience. Our live stream event, along with participants wearing masks, has been updated to meet COVID-19 guidelines. Our theme this year is Sociology, moving forward one step at a time. Students from Cohort A and Cohort B will be presenting various topics that are engaging and stem from their personal passions. These students have volunteered their time to this group and diligently prepared presentations to enlighten you on various topics. You may be new to TED, and you might be wondering, who is this TED guy? Well, I'm here to tell you that there isn't a person. Instead, TED is an acronym for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. The TED organization has covered many ideas worth spreading in various fields of study. You will see this same diversity in the topics being presented to you here today. For this period, we will have 3 presenters that will talk about music, mental health, and STEAM. For our first presenter, our next TEDxDHS presenter is Ryan Arruda. Ryan is a sophomore here at DHS. Ryan is a member of DHS Marching Band Indoor Percussion. He plays a variety of instruments, his favorite being the piano. Ryan loves winter and dreams one day of visiting Norway. He plans to attend college upon graduation. Ryan chose his TEDxDHS talk topic because of his love of music and how music has inspired him and brought him joy. He wants to share his passion for music with you. Please welcome Ryan Arruda as he presents Music, Effect on Emotion.
Thank you. Today I'll be speaking on music's effect on emotion. Here we have 6 different common emotions that people feel day to day, such as happiness, sadness, fear, disgust, anger, and surprise. You may have felt very extreme forms of these, and they are obviously, songs can produce these emotions as you listen to them. But the question comes up, how? How are your emotions impacted when you listen to these songs? Before we go into that, I'd like to define music. Music is vocal or instrumental sounds, or both, combined in such a way as to produce beauty of a form, harmony, and express of emotion. Now, a little bit about my personal experience with music. As you heard, I am involved with the band and percussion, but aside from that, I am a very large and huge fan of classical music and their amazing composers. And one especially, Claude Debussy, who has shaped my life, and you are listening to his song now, which is Clair de Lune. Next we have the beginnings of music. They are produced with the banging of sticks and stones and young. Well, this has obviously advanced over time. We can see the early forms of music were made to convey a certain form of emotion, as we saw before, anger, happiness, or sadness. But let's take a quick look at the timeline of music. Here we have the many classical eras of music, medieval, Renaissance, Baroque, classical, Romantic, and the 20th and 21st century. In the medieval era, we have such greats such as Bingen, Bird in the Renaissance, and some of the more well-known ones as we go forward. Bach in the Baroque, Vivaldi and Handel. In the classical, we have Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven. And the Romantic, we have Chopin, Liszt, and Schubert. And the 20th and 21st, which is possibly one of my favorites, we have Saint-Saëns, Debussy, and Satie. Next up, I'm going to talk on the scientific viewpoint on music. This view is completely positive in the scientific field. As seen by a study in SCL Health, dopamine levels are proven to increase, and those who practice positive listening find their moods improving in just 2 weeks. Music can improve your mood, your quality of life, and self-esteem, but it's also used in therapy. It's seen as extremely safe, non-invasive, easily accessible, and non-expensive. Many studies occurred, and scientists found that happier music obviously produced a happier form of emotion. It helped people have better physical health, higher income, and greater relationship satisfaction. Here we have a chart on treating depression with music therapy. So we have a control group and a group that went under music therapy and psychotherapy, and the control group also went under psychotherapy alone. But within 6 months of treatment, the depression score has dropped significantly along with the music therapy. Here we have 6 scientifically proven songs to make you happy, with such greats such as Don't Stop Me Now by Queen, Dancing Queen by ABBA, Uptown Girl by Billy Joel, I'm a Believer by the Monkees, I'll Survive by Gloria Gaynor, and Walking on Sunshine by Katrina and the Waves. And now I'll talk a little bit more on how. We have different keys and chords, and major keys and chords produce the happier feeling, like Imagine by John Lennon. Minor chords produce the sadder feeling, like some parts of Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. The 2 other chords we have are diminished chords, in which those are used as transitions into the minor and major, and augmented chords, which usually lead to the resolution. Now I'd like to discuss a little bit more about the recent times how you can use music now, especially during COVID-19. The world has been hit by COVID, and it's affected us for about we're coming up to a little over a year now. And we've had lockdowns and quarantines, and music therapy was a way people combated it. But it did obviously have those people that did not use music therapy and those people that possibly couldn't have found it. And here we have a study by the CDC in late June of 2020. 40% of US adults reported struggling with mental health or substance abuse. And within those, we have 31% with anxiety and depression symptoms. 13% started or increased substance abuse, 26% with trauma or stressor-related disorder symptoms, and possibly one of the most shocking, 11% seriously considered suicide. So this was done by the CDC. This was only in late June of 2020. This number has obviously gone up since then, but we have to think of ways to combat this, and we have to find ways to fight this. And one of the ways that people have been doing it is with music therapy, once again. In a study by NPR and therapist Filippo Giordano, music therapy was used with frontline workers and doctors, and, quote, it reduced the stress and improved the well-being of those people. So we can see by the studies before and right here that music therapy works. And this study was actually conducted in February of 2021, so it's a fairly recent study. And not only do we have COVID distracting us, but we have things such as news distracting us. And it's not just locally, but it's around the world. BBC World Service, NPR, CBC, which is a Canadian news channel, Euronews, Dushwell, Fox News, and some more well-known ones to us locally in Massachusetts, Univision, RTP, and Global. We find ourselves listening to these things, and the things we hear on them we may agree with or we may not, but it usually causes a lot of stress, as especially in the news recently, there have been a lot of stressful events. But one thing that I ask you is that you tune out with the news and you tune into music. You tune into the serenity, you tune into the peace, and you tune into the hope. You as a person can come together with your friends, with your family, come together as a world, one global community, and get through this together. Because if we band together, we are unstoppable. We just all must find a way to get through this, and one of those is with music. And right now you're listening to Arabesque No. 1. But that is one of the many ways that we can get through this, and this is how we must move forward one step at a time. Thank you.
Okay, for our next presenter, our next TEDxDHS presenter is Jacqueline Menlin. Jackie is a senior at DHS whose future plans are to attend the University of New Haven to study criminal justice. Jackie plans to focus her studies on criminal analysis. Jackie is part of the casting crew of DHS Theater Company and is also vice president of her Jewish youth group, Hanid USY. She is also a cheerleader coach for DYFL. Please welcome Jacqueline Menlin as she presents a look at mental health.
Mental health. Everyone has it. Whether it's good or bad, we all have mental health. Mental health is directly defined as a person's condition with regard to their psychological and emotional well-being. And since the pandemic has started, the struggle with mental health has increased astronomically. Mental health first aid is a major help in helping those who are struggling with mental health. Some of the things that you learn when learning mental health first aid is the risk factors. Some risk factors include genetics, those who suffer from depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. Things like that can get passed down to their offspring. So that's a major risk factor. If you have mental health, do you want to have kids? Do you want to risk that? Another thing that you learn when doing mental health training is how to assist. You learn how to listen. You learn how to validate those who are struggling. And you learn the hotlines. You learn the numbers. You learn what to provide for those depending on what you're struggling with. And you also know the warning signs, which I will address in the next sign. Some warning signs of suicide and suicidal thoughts are talks of suicide. In today's society, it's completely common for teens and youth to joke about suicide, whether it be through Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok. We either make jokes about it on posts or comment on posts, and it's just completely pushed away. A teen can post on their Snapchat private story, "I've had such a bad day, I want to kill myself." And we all overlook it as if it's nothing. But this is a warning sign. Thoughts like these are warning signs, and it's something that we need to pay more attention to. Hopelessness. A feeling of hopelessness is a huge warning sign for thoughts of suicide. During COVID, a lot of our seniors are getting their thoughts of graduation taken away, our prom taken away, our last homecomings, our final hockey games, football games, and that provides us with a feeling of hopelessness. It's hard. Withdrawing from loved ones. It's very common for many who are struggling with mental health to withdraw themselves from loved ones. They may not go to social activity events. They may withdraw from their extracurricular activities. They may stop using their phones, delete their Snapchats, delete all their social media, stop texting their friends, and that's a major warning sign. Mood changes. Changing from being happy to being sad, being tired all the time to being energetic all the time, sleep deprivation, all of those things are major warning signs. Now you may be wondering, how can I help my friend who is struggling? How can I help my sister who is struggling? From my personal experience, the major way to help is just by listening, validating. No matter how big or small someone's struggle may be to you, it's big to them. And all that they need is to feel validated in their emotions, to feel that they can feel the way that they feel. Also providing information, whether it be hotlines, therapists, ways to get help, any of those. Professional help, doctors, guidance counselors, which I'll discuss in the next slide, teachers, any of the above are major help. Here at DHS, we have guidance counselors and we have social workers. If you're struggling, you can reach out to Ms. Heath, Mr. McGrath, Ms. Fitzgerald, Mr. Wright, or our social workers, Ms. Thomas, Ms. Callahan, or Ms. Nocon. For my personal experience, I personally reached out to our teachers. When the pandemic hit, I felt extremely alone. I didn't know what to do with myself. I'm outgoing. I talk to everybody and anybody. I make friends with 50-year-olds at Target. So not being able to see people, that took a hit on me. And the way I solved that was by emailing the teachers I loved the most. I emailed Ms. Pavlik and I emailed Ms. Lassie. And I said, hey, can we set up a Zoom call? Can we set up a Google Classroom meet? I just need to talk to somebody. And of course, they both were completely willing. I spent hours talking to Miss Pavlik about what was going on in my personal life. I spent hours talking to her and just ranting to her about all the silly drama going on in my life. And I just talked to her like she was my friend. And she was there for me when I needed her. And she also was able to provide me with sources throughout the school. Miss Lassie also took a hit. She loves her students. Anybody who's had Miss Lassie knows she loves her students. It is why she does this job. Not being able to see her students was a major hit for her. And so by connecting with her to help myself, I feel as though I helped her too. And I think that everybody can benefit from reaching out to a teacher and making those connections. Since the pandemic hit, CDC has reported that anxiety and depression rates have gone up by 31%. Substance abuse, so nicotine, alcohol, marijuana, that's all gone up by 13%. And suicide and suicidal thoughts have gone up by 11%. In America, suicide is one of the top 10 causes of death. So here's what puzzles me the most. Why do we care about physical health so much more than mental health? Why is it that when a kid falls, we immediately grab the antibiotics, grab the Band-Aids, slap it on, and let them heal? Why is it that when we're growing up, drink at least 8 ounces of water a day, make sure you're eating 3 meals a day, you're always taking care of your mental health, your physical health? Why is it that it's so much more difficult to reach out and get a therapist? Why is it shamed upon to get put on antidepressants? Why is that a bad thing? Why is it that we teach our youth that your physical health is important, but the second your mental health comes into play, you'll be fine. It's just a bad day. You're just sad right now. Why is that the situation? Your life matters. Your mental health matters. Recently, someone I love dearly tried to take their own life. They were put into a mental hospital. They almost didn't make it. Someone I know, someone in my life, this has happened to me personally. And this isn't the first time. And if I had just thought about mental health and mental health first aid a little bit more, I could have been there to help, but I wasn't. And that's okay, it's not my fault. This took a toll on me. This set me back. This experience, I stopped doing my schoolwork. I started failing a couple classes. I almost didn't have this TED Talk ready. But instead, for her, I pushed myself to get better. I pushed myself to do what I needed to do in her name. While she's okay now, that experience will live with me for the rest of my life. And you may be wondering about my story. Why am I up here talking to you about mental health? What is my credibility? I've struggled with anxiety and depression since the 5th grade. I faced a major move, put me into a depressive state. I was probably one of the worst 5th grade students you'd ever seen. And I've struggled with eating disorders. I've struggled with PTSD. I've struggled with it all. I finally reached out for help when the pandemic hit. I finally realized that enough was enough. And I finally reached out to my teachers, Miss Pavlik and Miss Lassie, who then said, hey, maybe talking to your doctor isn't the worst idea. Maybe you should talk to your therapist. And I finally got put on 3 different antidepressants, and I actually have my first meeting with my therapist on March 22nd, which is a huge goal for me. So finish that shampoo and conditioner at the same time. Finish your toothpaste and your mouthwash at the exact same time. Finish a chapstick without losing it. Pet all of the dogs and the cats and all the animals in the world. There's so much more to this life. And this is how we're moving forward one step at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie, for presenting such an important topic to our presentation here. Our next TEDxDHS presenter is Faiza Achilova. Faiza is a junior here at Dartmouth High, and this is her second TEDxDHS presentation, and we are excited to have her join us again. Faiza loves the violin and fencing and plans to major in the STEAM area upon graduation, but dreams of working for Doctors Without Borders and helping the developing countries. She is passionate about the importance of STEAM since it combines the study of humanities and science. and leads to a more rounded future learners. Please welcome Faiza Achilova as she presents Why the World Needs STEAM.
As the world and society races towards new innovations, technologies, and creations, we're turning a blind eye to the further implication it has on the fabric of our society, on how it cultivates systemic racism, on how it cultivates discrimination. Now, our lives are quite literally being engineered. So there's this portrayal of this fantastical facade of this modernized world, while underneath, there's so much more. There's so much bias. There's so much racism. And there's so many problems. And what we need is STEAM in order to tackle these problems. We need to emphasize the importance of humanities and the arts into science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Therefore, STEAM. So now I want to talk to you about this man here. His name is Robert Julian Borchak Williams. So one day he was at work and he received a phone call. And a guy was telling him that he was going to be arrested, so to come down to the police station. So I don't know about you, but I wasn't aware that police officers just hit you up and ask you to come down and get arrested. So obviously he thought it was a prank, went on with his day. He came home, and upon driving up to his driveway, 2 police officers followed. He was arrested and handcuffed on the spot. His wife, meanwhile, and 2 young daughters were watching this all take place. He asks them, "Sir, why am I being arrested?" And they reply, and I quote, "Larceny and a felony warrant." So his wife asks them, "Where are you taking him?" They respond, "Google it." So much help, right? So anyways, he gets to the police station. He is interrogated for hours and stays there overnight. Eventually, the police officers show him this photo. This is a surveillance photo taken from a shoplifting incident at a nearby boutique. They ask him, "Is this you in the photo?" And he replies, "Do you think all black men look the same?" So no, of course this wasn't him. And I don't know about you, but I cannot distinguish any discernible features from this photo. So how is it that they connected 2 seemingly unconnected photographs? The answer is simple: facial recognition technology. Now, facial recognition softwares are increasingly becoming more common used in the criminal justice system. But here's the problem. Technology does what we tell them to do. We're in control, right? And there lies the problem. Humans are the epicenter of bias and bias-driven data. No surprise that softwares are similarly driven. Now, I'm going to come back to this point later, but the conclusion of this anecdote is that it illustrates and exemplifies not just the racism and just utter disrespect to Robert by law enforcement. It shows the problems in the system itself in technological contexts. Now, this system is severely flawed, but here's the question: who is the we? Who are the creators behind these softwares? Right? Who are the engineers and computer scientists creating these? And here's the simple answer: is behind most of this is generally, predominantly white men. To put this into quantitative context, NSF found in 2015 that 49% of workers in STEM were white males, while black men, black women, Hispanic women totaled to about maybe 10, 11%, while Asian men and women accounted for 21%. So now we're seeing facial recognition technology tends to target or is unable to discern the features of black individuals, but yet the creators are predominantly white. It's kind of interesting, right? I don't know. So anyways, to kind of talk about this topic, I'm going to show you this hypothetical situation between 2 candidates. So let's say you're in charge of hiring the new director for the Board of Education in Massachusetts. So you have 2 candidates. You have candidate A and candidate B. So candidate A has grown up her whole life in a low-income, middle-class household, and she's attended public schools her whole life. She's worked in low-income communities and public schools, so she has experience, right? Candidate B, on the other hand, she has grown up in a higher-income family. She's attended private schools her whole life and does not have the same experience as candidate A. Now, I'm not saying their credentials are different. I'm not saying one is a better person than the other, but I'm asking you, if you wanted to tackle the issues in the public school system, who would you choose? If it were up to me, I would hire candidate A. Why? Well, I want someone who's going to understand the issues at hand, connect with the students, connect with the people, right? And just give a better and broader understanding of the problems we're facing. Now, why doesn't this apply to everything? Why doesn't this apply to science? So if these technologies are targeting a specific group, why do we lack so much diversity? And not just that, so many of these workers are so divided into their own fields, and they don't explore other ones. Now, if we had a diverse and well-rounded group, I feel like this could be very different. I'm going to expand on this point, but first, how does this relate to STEAM, and like how does any of the things I said relate to the arts and the humanities? Well, the A, as I said previously, stands for arts. So STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. We're seeing now more than ever the importance of incorporating the humanities and the arts into our education system, and the importance of interdisciplinary studies. Now, the humanities allows us to better understand the world, the societies, cultures, religions around us. It allows us, and it manifests deeper thinking and empathy, right? It builds creative thinkers, understanding people. And isn't that what the world needs? Isn't that what science needs right now? The well-rounded people, the people that understand their fellow people. So, policymakers, scientists, engineers, or let's say civil rights activists, it doesn't have to be so divided into two groups, right? Oh, STEM versus the arts, or let's say like an ethics professor versus a biology professor. We should immerse ourselves in what's considered unconventional knowledge, right? We should, instead of focusing so much on core curriculum classes that are really important, but also emphasize the arts, right? So make it, instead of so dichotomous, interdisciplinary. We should shift our focus beyond these and have a chance for balance and perspective, because that's what's necessary for all fields. Now, before we even sensationalize the idea of STEM, people were already anticipating the impact the lack of arts and science would have on the world. Now, when we think of, let's say, a really quote-unquote smart person, we think, yeah, this girl or guy, super, super nerdy, so good at science. Or we think, yeah, this person's a really great writer, like huge book nerd. We don't tend to correlate the two. We don't say, wow, this MIT student is actually studying biochemical engineering, but he's also majoring in ethics. But if you think about it, the ethics could really help him in the field he's planning on pursuing. So in 1959, this man here, Charles P. Snow, a British novelist, physicist, and chemist, delivered a famously controversial lecture. And basically what he talked about was this divide between the science and literary world. So basically what he said was that scientists proudly can't quote Shakespeare, while literary nerds, let's say, can't tell you the second law of thermodynamics. Now I'm going to share some information and examples pertaining to the lack of morality and the issues regarding racism and discrimination in AI. But I want you to keep in mind, how could this be different if we did incorporate the arts and humanities and did emphasize STEAM? So the AI in the justice system. So now we're seeing more than ever the incorporation of artificial intelligence and technology into the criminal justice system, especially when it comes to sentencing individuals and determining how long they'll serve and whether or not they're more likely to commit a crime in the future. So these are all based off of data. And if we know anything about data, it's that it's so bias-driven, right? They take what we give them. So in here, the data is actually being weaponized against Black communities. And I'm not saying these systems are using race, right? They're not saying, okay, you're Black, you're gonna spend more time in jail. It's way more complicated than that. They look at where you live, how much money you make, and those tend to be communities that have greater densities of Black individuals. So in 2013 in Wisconsin, a man named Paul Zilli stole a lawnmower. So he stole a lawnmower and he pleaded guilty. So they had this deal with the judge, right? But the judge turned to a software system called Compass, which was going to determine, okay, how long should he serve and is he likely to commit a future crime? So this Compass system, it ranks you from 1 to 10 of likeliness to recommit a crime and the severity of the crime. So Zilli was found to actually be more likely to commit an extremely violent crime for stealing a lawnmower. All right, so the sentence was originally 1 year, and this went up to 2 years. And you can think, oh, it's only 1 year. But any extra day in prison is already so much more treachery to endure in our current system. It's heart-wrenching to think that his Blackness may have contributed to this, or possibly his residency, or how much he made. Now, I want you to I want you to reconsider the idea of Robert and his situation with his false arrest. So now imagine that the software used for the determination of his photo and the surveillance photo was actually curated by a very diverse team, right? So it included majorly Black individuals. It included ethicists, it included professors of sociology, it included professors of ethics, and it also included policymakers. It included activists. And they all came together and made this system, and actually, he was never falsely arrested. So imagine that, right? The thing is, we don't need to imagine it. It doesn't have to be imagination. It can be real. And I'm not saying all policymakers should be scientists or all scientists should be policymakers. But rather, we have to include the world of policy into the world of science and really think about the social impact it has with the projects I've mentioned. We should credibly think about and discuss the impacts on the rest of the world. We need people. We need well-rounded people, right? We need interdisciplinary studies. We need these scientists to also have a passion and learn about the humanities. We need empathetic thinkers. We need understanding people, creative thinkers, so these problems don't keep reoccurring, right? This racism and discrimination will only go farther unless we actually do something to stop it, unless we actively try to change something. And this starts with our education. It starts with the young kids, our future leaders, right? From a young age, we need to say STEAM, the arts. We need to vigorously train and tell students to also embrace the humanities, to embrace the arts, and pursue what they want to pursue. We need to create these well-rounded people. We must mainstream the idea that ethics and responsibility when exploring fields such as science and technology are so important, and the arts and humanities offer us a door to these and solutions to the problems. Now, this isn't just food for thought, right? Humanities are not just food for thought. There's so much more. They're an extension to more nuanced thinking, understanding thinking that we need in science right now. So this thing I talked about today, I think it just could go in one ear and out the other. But I want you to know that we say, oh, one person can't make a difference. But if you think about one-person things, the reason we have our iPhones today is because of one person's idea. The reason we have our laptops is because of one person's idea. It takes only one person to make an impact. Any of us could go on to do something so great, right? It takes one person, and then that creates such a cascading effect. So we shouldn't have this constricting idea that I can't do anything because you can do something, because it all starts with you. So I implore you to explore STEAM and really think about how we can all incorporate the humanities into our daily lives as we go on to college, right? What can we do? So please, let's plow forward with STEAM. Thank you.
Thank you, Faiza, for such an important topic that is happening now and will be important for our future. So we would like to thank our presenters for this period. Also, we wanted to let you know that you can view these TED Talks throughout the day, and in future days coming, we're using the same links. They will be available to you to watch later on as well. Okay, so just use the same links to view the TED Talks. Thank you.
DHS, and welcome back to the third period presentation of our DHS TEDx event. I'm Mrs. True, and Mrs. Souza and I are happy to welcome you to this event. This is our sixth TEDxDHS event, and we are thrilled to present this exciting event here at Dartmouth High School. This is an independently organized event. This year it is being broadcast via live stream by the DHS TV media production. And this change obviously is a change from our previous format for those of you who have participated, where we are normally in front of a live studio audience. Our live streamed event, along with the participants wearing masks, have been an update that we have put into place in order to meet COVID-19 standards. Our theme this year is Sociology, moving forward one step at a time. Students from cohorts B will be presenting various topics that are engaging and stem from their personal passions. These students have volunteered their time to this group and diligently prepared presentations to enlighten you on various topics. Since you may be new to TED, you may be wondering, who's this TED guy? Well, I'm here to tell you there isn't really a TED guy. Instead, TED is an acronym for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. So therefore, the TED organization has covered many ideas worth spreading in various fields of study. You will see the same diversity in the topics being presented to you here today. Our first presenter for the third period presentations is Emma Fernandez. Emma Fernandez is a junior here at Dartmouth High School. She is a member of the Dartmouth High School Theater Company and plays the violin. Emma has chosen her topic on Portuguese culture because her grandparents have relayed various stories to her about their personal immigrant experience, and she has wanted to delve deeper into what brought them here to the South Coast region. Please welcome Emma Fernandez as she presents Portuguese Culture and Politics.
Cramming your life's belongings into a bag. Choosing and deciding which part of your life is valuable enough to keep and bring into the new world. You're looking out, not just for yourself, but for the little one that soon will arrive. You're looking out for a place with more potential, a place where you can grow and prosper. You want your child to grow up not having to worry about when their next meal will be, not having to worry about sharing a single-sized house with 13 siblings, and not having to worry about using their imagination when playing with vegetables, pretending those vegetables are dolls. You're moving to America, the land of the free and the brave, a foreign place where foreign sounds come from people's mouths. The story of my grandparents. I love to tell it, but even more, hear it. I've been hearing this story since I was old enough to understand. The older I got, the more I wanted to know. I bombarded them with questions every time I visit. But the one that always seemed to puzzle me was, why here? My grandparents had the whole United States to pick from, but like many others, they choose to build their life in New England. But nevertheless, she answers my question. She said that she knew a Portuguese household that would sponsor them in America. To immigrate to America, immigrants had a family that would sponsor them. This sponsor family was responsible for all the money, the housing, and would help the immigrant families establish a life in their new house. I further wondered why there was such a large community of Portuguese people in the New England area. Well, have you heard of the whaling industry? People have been whaling for thousands of years, but in the 11th century, Portuguese people started to get involved in the whaling industry, hunting and trading products like blubber and meat. Over time, whales migrated from Portugal shores to the Atlantic islands of Azores, Madeira, and Cape Verde. Whales continued to migrate, and whalers continued to follow. The migration led the Portuguese whalers to North America, but particularly the island of Nantucket, as it was located close to the whale migration routes. But in the 1800s, Nantucket, shallower harbor, and obstructing sandbars and dangerous shore led to the decline of the whaling port in Nantucket, and it was later focused in New Bedford, Massachusetts. In 1830, New Bedford became the leading port, making it become the main focus of Portuguese immigration. Whaling in the United States hit its peak in 1870 and 1880s, with the Portuguese immigrants not only arriving at New Bedford, but also traveling to the West Coast, traveling to California and Hawaii. Most of the Portuguese immigrants had been sailors on the whaling ships, but eventually settled in a number of coastal stations where migrant whales were spotted and pursued. During the last 2 decades of the 19th century, the whaling industry diminished as fossil fuels became more reliable than whale oil. But in 1971, the U.S. officially outlawed whaling. Industrial became the new forefront of Portuguese immigration and urbanization growth. In the 2018 report by the World Atlas, the states with the largest Portuguese population is as follows: California, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Florida, New York, Connecticut, and Hawaii. In the same World Atlas report states California is ranked the highest population of Portuguese Americans, home to 346,000 Portuguese Americans. Portuguese have been arriving in California aboard American whaling ships. The Portuguese have traditionally preferred to follow horticultural pursuits, where they are especially active in the state's dairy industry, and San Jose in the tuna industry, and San Diego. California captures the culture of the Portuguese people that immigrated there, with local Portuguese community activities such as the Holy Ghost festivals and the Portuguese Cultural Center. The report states that Hawaii had a population of 48,000 Portuguese Americans. In the 1800s, Hawaii had a large scale of production of sugar, which required many workers. But due to the Western diseases, the Hawaiian population had decreased. By 1870, there was already approximately 400 Portuguese in Hawaii who had left whaling ships to establish a life primarily in agriculture. One of them is Mr. Pereira, a well-respected owner of the dry goods store, recommended that the Hawaiian government bring Portuguese workers and their families to the Hawaiian government, bring their families from Madeira, as they were skilled in working in the fields. He then agreed to recruit workers that were skilled in working in the fields, agreed to work workers, and arranged for their transportation. Mr. Pereira agreed to represent the Portuguese when they landed in Hawaii. Massachusetts is home to the second highest population of Portuguese Americans, with a total population of 296,000. The Portuguese culture has drastically mixed into Massachusetts, to the extent that Portuguese is the second most spoken language in the state. Portuguese immigration increased in the 1900s. New immigrants were attracted by employment in the textile factories and in industrial towns of southeastern New England. New Bedford provided many industrial employment, but other large Portuguese communities developed around the textile factories, such as Fall River and Providence. In 1960s, we saw a vast number of immigration coming to Massachusetts, from mainland Portugal, the Azores, Madeira, and Cape Verde. Some of the increasing numbers of immigration were due to the cause of devastating volcano eruption in Fayal and the Portuguese dictatorship under Antonio Salazar. Later in the 1990s and early 2000s, there was an increase of Brazilian people immigrating to the area. Many of the Portuguese immigrants planted roots in close-knit communities where they would run their businesses among themselves and observe cultural festivals that reflect their connection to their homeland. As many of you may know, there's a thing that goes on, an annual thing that goes on every year, called the Madeira Feast. It is one of the most popular festivals in the Portuguese community. The Madeira Feast is, some may know it, is the Portuguese Feast of the Blessed Sacrament. It is the biggest event in New Bedford every year, with this year being the 106th annual celebration. As the name says, the feast originates from Madeira, a Portuguese island off the coast of Africa. In 1950, 4 Madeiran immigrants wanted to create the festival for their homeland, with a 4-day celebration of entertainment, a carnival, a parade, and a 5K race. And of course, food, as the feast without food in the Portuguese culture is unheard of. Portuguese people have a rich culinary culture. Living in this region, you must have heard of malasadas, that fried dough with all the sugar poured on top. Well, Portuguese Americans influenced the way of the land. We have countless Portuguese restaurants that serve traditional dishes, such as chicken alejada and caldo verde. There are many aspects of the region that the Portuguese have influenced, like food, education, and the creation of the Portuguese American Caucus, established in 1995. This caucus is responsible for the attempt to add Portuguese language programs to the advanced placement curriculum. The Portuguese also influence, and the one that is focused today, is the political impact on the South Coast area. With high numbers of Portuguese population, the Portuguese would be considered a powerful contributor to the community's politics. But observers say the Portuguese population could do so much better at their political engagement, where 50% of Portuguese Americans become U.S. citizens. Of that 50%, there are 50 newly citizens that are registered to vote. And of the 50% that register for voting, they participate in voting. The lack of Portuguese participation can be seen at local levels, as in New Bedford, where there are only a few Portuguese American mayors. One of them is George Rogers. He was the grandson of a Portuguese immigrant in 1970. To help civic participation of the Portuguese descent, a nonpartisan group called the Portuguese American Citizens Project was put together. The project ran from 1999 to 2016, and involving itself with 52 religious groups and social welfare organizations. A woman who lives in Fall River stated, "Voting in my church went up 40% to 70% thanks to the campaign." Even though this campaign helped the civic participation, in 2016, the Portuguese American Citizen Project was terminated by the board of directors. This project took resources away that needed to be redistributed. But even though the Portuguese American Citizens Project is no longer in effect today, it is still important to be promoting civic participation, as we live in a Portuguese-influenced community. Where Portuguese Americans want their voice to be heard, you can vote for a politician that will understand and see the importance of Portuguese culture. We see the influence Portuguese culture has on our community. Encouraging a strong civic participation not only benefits Portuguese Americans, but the whole community, and to ensure a better future. And that is how we are moving forward, one step at a time.
Thank you, Emma. That was wonderful. So glad that we're talking about Portuguese culture. Okay, our next presenter is Sean Allen. Sean is a sophomore here at Dartmouth High School. Originally from Colorado and Georgia, Sean brought his love of music, international politics, and science here to Dartmouth. He plays both the guitar and the viola. Sean has a passion for space, and he hopes to one day make that a part of his career when he becomes an aerospace engineer. Please welcome Sean Allen as he presents Heartless Headlines.
In the 21st century, there has never been a more important time to stay informed. Now, one of the biggest issues recently is the fact that there's so many different viewpoints to take into account. Therefore, it's hard to determine which sides are biased and which sides are more reasonable to look at and informative. So today I want to address some of these concerns and hopefully help everybody become a better reader. So here I have 3 examples of some news articles and opinion pieces, and I want everybody to just kind of look at them and review them and try to pick out which one of these has bias. Here we have an article from the Washington Post regarding Amazon's work ethics. We have an article from Fox News talking about Trump's response to the January Capitol riots, as well as an article talking about the benefits of going vegan from the Vegan Society. Now, bias is any personal affiliation with one side of an argument that is not associated with the evidence and reasoning that is being presented. So whether it be at a grocery store, just talking to somebody, or at a heated debate on your dinner table, bias is all around us. And it's very important that we recognize this so we can help combat it to become a more fair arguer and to make the world a better place in general. Now, almost as important as bias itself is identifying how we can find it in things. So there's multiple forms and types of bias, so I think that going over them will help all of us identify these. So one common type of bias is funding bias. Any modern media or even small-time forms of communication require some outside investment in order to stay afloat. These things require money. And in most cases, the money for these companies is going to come from large corporations, whether it be entertainment companies like Disney or AT&T that own all kinds of different entertainment companies, or outside investors like the Shell Oil Company and Amazon. The problem with this is that because there's so many places that the money comes from, these people who fund them have some influence over what data is going to come out of these. And this can generate a problem as the news source, well, playing to stay informative, is also playing to the roles of their owners. Oh, sorry, I flipped twice. The next type of bias that I want to address is viewer bias. So every form of information and media has always had an intended audience. Now this goes back to the 10th century. You look at Magna Carta, talking about how kings should respond to their own laws, and even nowadays, when you have things like Fox News, who appeals to a more conservative audience, CNN appealing to more liberal, having bias towards your audience is beneficial, which is why it's so common. When you address a certain audience over another one, you have a more consistent viewer base. However, one problem with this is that if you address only a certain media base, then you're going to intentionally exclude different sources of information to more put forth something that's more appealing to somebody. People want to relate to an idea, and when that happens, companies are going to do that to get more views, but then you lose truth. Personal bias. Now, personal bias is a much more common type that we see outside of big media. Personal bias can be, I have personal bias over all kinds of ideas. Personal bias is not as threatening due to the fact that personal biases change, and people who have personal bias pretty much always express it as an opinion, you know? When you're talking about an idea or an issue and you have personal bias, you're not going to tout that as fact. However, the problem is when you have people who are using personal bias while doing research, these ideas can bleed into it, and people are going to take an already determined point of view regardless of evidence. Now, these types of bias are all important, but it's also very important to see how these types of bias are put in, how they employ these ideas with different tools. So connotation and tone is super common to see. Now, connotation is addressing any word with a positive or negative feeling in order to portray an opinion. Now, connotation you'll see all kinds in books and stories, but you also see it a lot in the news. Applying connotation gives informational pieces opinions, but the problem is that when they have opinions, they generally start to sway from truth. And when you're trying to portray truth, when you're trying to portray an opinion as truth, it's not reliable and it's misinforming. Another type of tools that people use for bias is blatant lies. Now, blatant lies are not as dangerous as certain other types due to the fact that blatant lies are easily deniable. When somebody's blatantly lying, it's easy to determine that, as it's not supported by evidence. You know, maintaining a reliability with your audience is very important, and blatantly lying about this would damage that. Now, an issue with blatant lying sort of comes up when it's not so blatant. When you inlay lies within positive and true evidence, it gives it a feeling of reliability which it wouldn't otherwise have. And you see this all the time in news. Adding small lies to big true pieces creates another point to bounce off of, to push forth an opinion that seems like fact, but it isn't. And finally, we have removal of context. Now, removal of context is so common to see because it's so useful. Removal of context is removing any type of background or outside information that would be relevant to putting a point forward. Now, this can include cutting up quotes and pulling out certain words to change how somebody said something or change what they said even, as well as just making somebody seem vilified based off something that they partially said but they weren't actually expressing themselves. Removal of context becomes so dangerous due to the fact that, unlike the other two, it's not opinionated and it isn't genuinely deniable. Removal of context, when they have cut up pieces, it's still true. And the issue with that is that when it's true, you can't tell somebody that they're wrong for saying something just because they don't include background. However, if they remove context, it gives it a bad tone, and you can add reasoning to true evidence. Now, I have some more examples right here, so I think we can help pick these apart and kind of see how this is used in common media. Here I have an article excerpt from a CNN Health talking about the COVID-19 vaccine. It's a good example of how they use connotation inside of article titles. Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 vaccine gets the nod from the CDC. Getting the nod could be just portrayed as receives approval or pushed forth. However, adding the positive connotation of getting the nod appeals to the generally liberal and industrial and like political accepting groups that CNN applies to. If you trust the institution, then seeing positive connotation is going to be appealing to you because you can relate to that. Now here, I have a piece from Fox News talking about also the COVID vaccine. However, here you can see that they have used a quote from a non-factual piece. Catholic bishops are a piece of evidence. However, they are strictly opinionated, as it's not defensible, factually. You know, if you are Catholic, then you can look to Catholic pastors and Catholic bishops for guidance and for opinions that apply to you. However, this is not scientifically proven, and because of that, using it in a scientific context is dangerous. It adds reliability to a subject that is not otherwise scientifically defensible. Now I want to come back to these first three articles we looked at earlier and point out some of the types that are being used here. Now, right here, we have the Washington Post talking about Amazon. Both the Washington Post and Amazon are owned by Jeff Bezos. And you might notice that a lot of the articles about Amazon are from the Washington Post. Now, this is, of course, no unbelievability because of the fact that he owns both of them. Why wouldn't he talk about himself? But the problem is a lot of these are mildly negative. Now, this is what I'd like to call controllable criticism. By applying a bad tone towards something that you control, you're already putting in your viewpoint. People are going to take you as reliable because they can see facts for themselves. It's undeniable that Amazon has had a rough history with ethics and employee treatment. But putting it in a negative tone gives reliability to something. But you can still control how it's being said. You can reduce the severity and redirect viewers' eyes from other viewpoints, as other news stations are not going to pitch in on an idea that is already being thoroughly reviewed. And here we have another article, or the first article from Fox News, talking about Trump's response to the Capitol. This is a good example of removal of context. They are not incorrect in the fact that Trump did say that he hated to see what unfolded on January 6th. However, removing this from the context of other Trump's quotes regarding the event might sway people's opinion over the actual history, as he has sort of gone back and forth, originally toting that he believed in their ideas, but not their actions. And finally, we have the Vegan Society's article on veganism. Now, they have personal bias, as I think it's fair to assume that everybody who works at the Vegan Society is vegan. They have a personal interest in getting people to come to their news source for search in veganism. So they're not going to purposefully portray veganism in a negative light, especially when they're touted as being reliable on this source. Veganism is a group, and people have an incentive to bring themselves in. So is this true, and are these real points? Yes. However, this is not the full argument. Pieces like this should be taken as purely opinionated and not informative, as all the points that are seen here are purely positive, which doesn't mean that there isn't negative points on another side of the argument. Now, I think it's important, now that we recognize where bias is seen in media, how we can combat this. Now, the biggest thing that we can do is recognize the fact that everybody has bias. No matter what form, people are going to have their own opinions, and that's going to influence how they take in data. Searching for different sources for one event can be extremely helpful in getting a more thorough and true recount of what happens to base your own opinion off of. Now, we need to remember that news sources' goals are not strictly to inform people. They're to make money. And because of that, they're not going to put out ideas that are negatively impacting their station or their audience. By touting ideas that their directed audience or the people who review their articles and who fund their company don't like, they're going to lose money, they're going to lose viewers, and that goes directly against their main incentive. So by purposefully excluding opinion and bias, recognizing where it is and removing it from information, being able to pick apart reasoning and facts is super important to building your own case. And each day, if we choose to go to multiple sources, we can become a better society and move forward in order to become more informed and fight misinformation. That is how we move forward one step at a time. Oh.
Thank you, Sean. That was very informative. And our last presenter for the Cohort A day of our TEDxDHS event are actually our first presenters back again. So again, we have Grace George and Sarah Hartman. Grace is a senior here at Dartmouth High School. She was the co-founder of the Science Club and wants to study biology in college. Grace also enjoys reading a good romance novel and has a bit of an obsession with the Bachelor franchise series. Sarah is a senior also here at Dartmouth High School and is very involved in a variety of extracurricular activities. She's the other co-founder of the Science Club, president of the Key Club, president of the Student Council, and captain of the math team. Additionally, Sarah is troop president for her Girl Scouts troop and plays violin. She loves to bake and play with her dog. Sarah and Grace have chosen their topic because both believe that learning is more important than grades and that everything that they have learned can't be measured by a grade. They want people to know that learning itself is fun. So please welcome, once again, Grace George and Sarah Hartman as they present what lies within the letter.
Think for a moment. What did you learn in the first 5 years of your life?
I know what you're thinking, probably not a lot. All I did was sleep, play, and eat. But actually, a lot of those things you did during your play were learning. One of my favorite memories of childhood was building sandcastles with my siblings. And I didn't realize at the time, but actually building those sandcastles taught me a lot about basics of engineering and construction. I remember in kindergarten when the firefighters came to visit and told us about fire safety. Those things they told us are so important to our life. Now I know to stop, drop, and roll, and to use a pillowcase if I need a firefighter to reach me, which could save my life if I ever get in that situation. Personally, one of my favorite toys as a child was this little medical kit that you can get. And I remember that little plastic stethoscope. I used to pretend to use it on my family. Although I couldn't hear the heartbeat, I did learn about a heartbeat.
Were you graded on these skills that you learned when you were a toddler? No, you were entirely self-motivated. But did you learn? Certainly.
So now, if we were able to learn without grades when we were a kid, why do we have grades now? Well, 3 of the main purposes of grades are evaluation, communication, and motivation. So teachers use grades to see how their students are doing, and they can, if a lot of students did not too good on a particular question, they can they know to reinforce it again. And colleges use grades to see if you are a good fit academically for that school. And grades also extrinsically motivates you, which means you're motivated to get the good grades so you'll study and do your work. Now, while grades have some benefits, such as they help you motivate and they help teachers and colleges see where you are, they do have many cons. Grades enforce that learn, test, forget, repeat method. So basically, you learn a unit, you test it, and you forget about it. And they know with all the pressure we have to learn, it's really hard to remember what we learned before because we need to get that grade. And grades can also be very impersonal. Alfie Kohn, who is an author and lecturer who writes about education, interviewed some teachers and students. And he found out that a student named Claire quoted that she felt that the first time she was giving a rubric, she felt that her education was more for her grade and less for her. Grades also encourage the fear of challenge. In that same article by Alfie Kohn, a teacher named Mr. Robbins said that when he noticed his students that when we did a project, picked the easier project instead of taking the harder one, even though challenge might teach them more, they care more about the grade. And grades are also very inconsistent. Here is a picture comparing the 7-point scale to the 10-point scale. So 2 students might get the same number grade, but their letter grade would be different in their report cards because of their school system. And also, teachers, even in the same school, teachers grade differently. So students might have the same level of mastery in the same topic, but they might get different grades because teachers grade differently. And also, methods like curving, where a certain amount of students have to get an A, a certain amount of students have to get a B, and so on. With that, your grade is not based on what you know, but what you know compared to others. And as we all know, grades have take a bad toll on our physical and mental health. Challenge Success, which is a nonprofit that works with schools, did a study in 5 California high schools, and they find out that 79% of high schoolers said that grades are a main cause of stress. 83% of high schoolers said that they have stress-related health problems. And one big problem that comes from this stress about grades is sleep deprivation. I know there's times where I put my grades on my sleep. And I'm going to read you a quote about a 9th grader in the article from Challenge Success. And when asked what they want their parents to know, it's, "I'm not staying up late because I want to. I know the consequences. But my grades are more important than my health. I'm not trying to make you upset. All I want to do is sleep." So we students know that sleep and our mental health is important, but sometimes the pressure of grades get the best of us.
Grades don't always measure learning the way that everyone learns best. According to the American Test Anxiety Association, over a third of students experience moderate to high levels of test anxiety. So that means that a student can understand the material perfectly well, but due to test anxiety, their grade doesn't reflect that. Everyone learns differently, and our grades are all the same. In addition, grades don't even measure the qualities that you need for success. According to a 2018 survey by IBM, the main qualities that employers look for are the ability to be flexible, the ability to manage your time, collaborate with others, and communicate effectively. These types of skills aren't necessarily measured by grades. Your grades don't define who you are. So, grades don't only impact you, they impact our entire country. They impact your teachers, your parents. Our MCAS scores impact our school and our state, and our grades reflect our entire country. So if we have a society that is based off of grades, what can we do right now as students?
we can focus on learning first. So by that I mean, forget about the grades for a second, not forever, just put them away for a second. Now, next time you get a project, try to take the more challenging topic, because although it might be harder, you might learn more from it. And also, our school just instated this new universal retake policy for the whole school, which you're privileged to have. So take advantage of that, and when you get your test back for the first time, try to analyze it and see if you understand it. Even before the teacher gives the test back, see if you understand it without the teacher telling you what to do. And then if you feel you can truly do better and you learn more, go ahead and do the retake. I mean, obviously do whatever you want, but that's my advice.
Not focusing on grades may actually lead to better grades. In an experiment that was done in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, 5th grade students who were told that they weren't going to be graded on an article they read were able to learn more from that information. They could retain the information longer, and they had a greater conceptual understanding of the material. In addition, they had a greater interest and they felt less pressure than the students who were told that they were going to be graded. So why focusing on grades when if you don't focus on grades, you will learn more and you'll be happier? So I know you may be thinking, if I'm not focused on grades and I'm focused on learning, what if I will never use a class in the future? Well, the truth is, you probably will use that class. Think back to that survey. The main quality that employers looked for in a person was adaptability. Every new class you take will give you a new perspective, and you will learn to adapt to new material. In addition, other skills, time management, critical thinking, communication, these are all things that you can focus on and develop in any class you take if you focus on learning. Also, things change. College students, 30% of college students change their major at least once, and the average person works about 12 jobs in their career. So even if you don't think you need to know about the structure and function of the mitochondria right now, you might need to use that in one of your different 12 jobs. So, yeah.
So what we want to leave you with is to try to learn outside of the classroom where you're not graded, just like you did when you were little. Here, there are many ways to do this. You can apply for internships, whether it's at a lab or a store or basically any business you like. Try to reach out and apply. You can also join clubs. Here at Dartmouth High School, we have the Science Club. I know, shameless self-promo. And in the Science Club, you can do your own independent projects, or you can do that outside of the Science Club. Just talk to a teacher, maybe do it after school during a pace. Also read a book. There are many books about many different topics. I know most of you don't read, but I guarantee you, if you talk to a librarian or even just Google something, you can find a book you like. And finally, what we're all here for, do a TED Talk. This has been a very enriching experience. I loved working with my best friend Sarah, and Ms. True and Ms. Souza and all of my other presenters to learn about and talk about topics that I care about and topics I didn't even know about. And I hope you all do it next year.
According to educator Edgar Dale, these types of learning experiences where we get to design our own experiments or do our own presentation will not only lead us to learn more, but we can use what we learn in more impactful ways.
And by focusing on learning first, because as Ms. True says, learning is more important than what lies within the letter, we as students can help the world move forward.
One step at a time.
Thank you for listening to us again.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take that. Thank you, Grace. Okay, so this actually is the conclusion of our Cohort A presentation for today. However, before we leave you, obviously, as you can tell, this is a huge undertaking that involves a substantial amount of people, and we'd like to spend a few minutes just saying thank you to all of the people. First, to each of our presenters. We are so proud of you. So, to Grace George, Sarah Hartman, Lavender Bork, Jaffa Heredano, Ryan Aruda, Jacqueline Midland, Emma Fernandez, Faiza Anchalova, and Sean Allen. Thank you for reaching out to us and for working with us and for showing us how amazing you are. Thank you. To Mr. Parati and Peter Chase, obviously we couldn't have done this live streaming event without you. Sound was wonderful. Mr. Parati is in the back helping us out as well. Thank you so much. To our DHS TV media crew, Kate and Lisa and JP Kearney, who have been behind the scenes working on all the stuff that I don't understand, but they do, thank goodness. And to Emma Derrick, who is our unsung hero behind the scenes as well as our tech crew here helping us out. And so certainly, you know, obviously this is a huge, huge group effort, and we appreciate everything that you have all done. Thank you so much. Tomorrow we will be bringing you Cohort B presentations with new topics and new students. Please use the Cohort B live stream link to access each of these presentations tomorrow. Thank you for your support of TEDxDHS. We hope that you are inspired and enlightened in a new area of interest, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow on our second day of TEDxDHS 2021. Thank you.